watching on YouTube, I'll try to address any comments you put in the YouTube comments, but the real party's on Zoom. So if you're able to quickly log on to the Zoom, I really recommend it because that's where we really monitor the chat. And you're going to hear some feedback for just a sec as the YouTube live stream sets up. We're watching on YouTube. All right, there we go. We're officially live on YouTube. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to all of our attendees. As you all come in, please, introduce yourself in the chat. I'm going to set myself to speaker view. You all might like that too, just for your viewing experience, so you can kind of see who's talking at different times. But it's up to you how you want to present things. To get things started, we give people a few seconds to just kind of get into the webinar and say hello. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to write your answers in the comments. But we're going to go ahead and start things off with a poll. We just want to know for the attendees, and I'll let the panelists vote too, but we want to know, have you ever done citizen science before? And there are no wrong answers here. If you've never done it, we'll tell you how to. If you aren't sure, that's okay. You'll leave here knowing what you need to do to get started. Oh my gosh, okay, it looks like we have about 70% of people in the room with us who have. We have about 23% who haven't, and we have one person who's unsure. Totally okay. I'm going to end the poll now, so let's go ahead and end it and share our results. So yeah, about 70% yes, a few no's, and one unsure. Totally okay. All right, let's do another poll. So I want to know, do you live in North Carolina? So this event, the way I've been kind of phrasing it to people, and it kind of works out because I myself am in Florida right now, but we focus on North Carolina, but we spotlight projects and concepts and ideas in citizen science that are globally relevant. So you'll be hearing from North Carolina-based educators, but you could take what they're telling you and use it in your work in Myanmar, or your work in Kansas, or wherever you're calling in from. And it looks like, okay, it's about an even split. We have about 54% of people who are in North Carolina, about 40% who aren't. No one unsure this time. One time someone answered unsure, and I was like, I respect that. All right, I'll give everybody a second more to vote. And we're going to end the poll, and we'll share those results. Cool, cool, cool. All right, and of you North Carolinians, we want to know, are you in the NC State community? So this can be defined however you want to define it. It could mean that you're an alum. It could mean that you've been on campus one time. It could mean that you're just a fan of the Wolfpack. However you define it, are you part of the NC State community? There we go, Chelsea. Love it. And Jason too. All right, we have about 75% who are part of the NC State community and about 25% who aren't. Very cool. A lot of Wolfpack fans here tonight. So gonna end that poll and share those results so you can all see it. And then we'll do our last poll before we get into our main presentation. So for those of you who are part of the NC State community, are you part of the NC State Citizen Science Club? Oh, wow, about 100% no. Usually we have one or two club members. Oh, we have some club members here. All right. And we have all ages who tune into these events. As young as middle school can be here. We have people who might be retirees who just want to learn more about concepts in citizen science, all sorts of folks. And we'll give you just a second more to vote. And we are going to end the poll and share those results. All right, so you saw our poll questions tonight. We learned a little bit about you. And of course, you can't fit in a box, so we'd love if you could introduce yourself in the chat too. As a warning, as you know, this event is being live streamed and the recording will be available after, and anything you put in the chat is fair game for us to shout out to the whole audience, to read out, but we just would love to hear a little bit more about you. We want this to be interactive. So if you have questions throughout, put those in the chat. Sharing the results for this poll. So one thing we like to do when we start out this event is before we even introduce our guests or introduce the topic, I want to tell you all exactly where you can go to get started with citizen science. So let me share my screen. And I'm going to actually put a link in the chat before I share my screen. And for those of you watching on YouTube, just follow along. So we want you all to go to scistarter.org/NCSU-home. So this is it. You put it in your browser, and you don't have to be in North Carolina. You don't even have to be in the United States to use this page and get started in citizen science. This is where you can find other Make It Count Mondays. If you want RSVP for next week, You can do that here. Next week, we have Peregrine from the Wild Sourdough Project. She's part of the Museum of Life and Science in Durham. And she's going to be, if you like to bake, this is the one to come to. So you can learn all about microbes and citizen science. And we have some other awesome guest speakers. And the season ends with Deja and I's Christmas wrap up, our holiday special. So you'll definitely want to RSVP for other Make It Count Mondays. Also on this page, you can find an Introduction to Citizen Science tutorial. We customized it for North Carolina, but there are concepts in here that you can learn from no matter what. So it'll give you the who, the what, the how, and the why of citizen science. It takes about 30 minutes. There are quizzes, there are videos, you get a cool certificate at the end. We really recommend it. It's a good way to orient yourself to citizen science. If you're new to it or you're not exactly sure what it is, this tutorial will help you get started. So you can explore the tutorial on this page. We also have some featured citizen science projects for you. Some of them that have been covered in past Make It Count Mondays, others that are coming up. And these are projects that you can do internationally. So Crab the Tap, that's United States based. It's a homegrown NC State project where you can join an investigation of safe drinking water. You can do marine debris tracker anywhere on Earth. If you want to monitor plastic pollution, that's the project for you. Stall catchers is a great one if you are more homebound or you're not leaving the house as much in these times. Stall catchers is great. I do it all the time on my computer, on my tablet. I am able to accelerate Alzheimer's research, but just by playing an online game. Also on this page, you'll find some additional lists that instructors have made of different projects and different community members that NC State have made if you want to keep the citizen science fun going. And of course, you can also find past recordings of Make It Count Mondays. So this page is kind of your one-stop shop, except everything's free. So maybe we shouldn't call it a shop, but it's a place you can go to get started in citizen science. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass the mic to Deja to introduce today's topic, and then she'll pass the mic over to our panel. So Deja, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Make It Count Monday. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So this is the weekly live stream show where we talk about citizen science. In previous weeks, we have talked about projects for kids like Eco Explorer. We've talked about projects for adults like Stall Catchers. But with so many different projects that cover so many different areas of science, how can we use citizen science more formally? So this week, we are talking about bringing citizen science into the classroom. Citizen science is a great way to do hands-on learning with a variety of topics. So how can we use citizen science to make science in the classroom more fun? And I think more importantly, to stay with the current time of virtual learning, how can we use citizen science to engage students at home and build community by bringing our classes together while far apart? I know that when I was in school, I enjoyed the hands-on activities much more than only reading about the week's lessons in a textbook. And because of that, I am a huge believer in exposing students to hands-on experiences because I believe that those are the experiences that stick in our minds and leave long-lasting impressions. And so that's one reason why I am super excited about today's show. It's because we have three special guests who will help us learn more about how to bring some fun citizen science projects into the classroom and help get our students excited about citizen science. And so this week, I will allow my three special guests to introduce themselves, and I would like everyone to welcome Chelsea, Jason, and Rachel. And I guess we can start our introductions with Chelsea.
Okay, thank you, Deja and Caroline and everyone at SciStarter for having us all here. I'm Chelsea Krieg. I am actually in the English department at NC State University. And so I'm a lecturer there. I teach predominantly English 101. Also sometimes teach creative writing and am a creative writing undergraduate academic advisor. So I am sort of coming from the humanities sides of things today.
Awesome. Next, we'll have Jason.
Thanks, Deja. Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Painter. I'm director of the Science House at NC State, and we do K-12 programs for students and teachers across North Carolina. And one of the things we got involved in many years ago, I think back in 2011, when we first started talking about it, I met this guy named Rob Dunn. Maybe some of you've heard of him. And we wrote a big grant, a big NSF grant called Students Discover. It was a $7.6 million project to help teachers across North Carolina implement citizen science. And so actually Rachel's one of those teachers that was part of that program, and I'm sure she'll talk a little bit more about that. But we specifically do quite a bit of professional development to help teachers across North Carolina implement citizen science in the classroom. And that's really our passion, to have kids doing citizen science and teachers knowing how to facilitate that process with their students. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been really a huge learning experience. But especially nowadays with remote learning, so many kids are at home. Citizen science is a great way to teach in the virtual environment we have. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm sure I'll share more soon with the questions that come, and I hope you guys ask lots of them.
And thank you so much, Jason. Lastly, we have Rachel.
Hi there. So my name is Rachel Palmatier, and up until September 30th of this year, I was an 8th grade science teacher that had completely transformed her classroom into a citizen science classroom. And how I was able to do that is I took a variety of citizen science projects and I wrote standard-based curriculum that went around that. And actually, if you've done anything with Ant Picnic, you've probably run into some of the curriculum that I've written. Really familiar with eMammal and iNaturalist as well, and a variety of many citizen science projects. And now I work for a nonprofit called the Center for Inquiry-Based Learning. And what I love about it is that I get to work and bring citizen science now to teachers across the state instead of just in my classroom. So I've done citizen science with up to 36 kids in crazy atmosphere, so I can definitely tell you how to do it safely, effectively, and it does make a huge difference.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And so to start off, I just want to ask, when did you first hear about citizen science, or when did you first learn about citizen science or become interested in citizen science? And so we can start off with Jason, followed by Chelsea and Rachel.
Sure. As I said, it was probably 2010 or 2011 when I first started hearing the buzz about citizen science, and got to know Rob Dunn very well. And Your Wildlife. If you don't know Your Wildlife, maybe I'll find it and put it in the chat. But you should check out some of the great work that they're doing there. And then got introduced to so many people over the years. Karen Cooper, who's amazing, doing great work. If you haven't read her book, you should. And then SciStarter also is just an amazing organization that I've been fortunate enough to work with. But through Students Discover, we did some really novel things, and we paired teachers with scientists that wanted to take their research and create them into citizen science projects. And then we had teachers, 3 teachers work with 4 different scientists at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences to create curriculum that fit in the curriculum for the standards for teachers, and to start pushing that. And the Science House did professional development across the state. I don't know how many workshops we've done up to this point, but many of them. But I'd have to say Rob Dunn's who introduced me to citizen science, and he converted me pretty quickly. He's a pretty good evangelist when it comes to citizen science. And so I've been hooked ever since, and it's been a passion of mine to help teachers and students, at least across North Carolina and even across the United States, to implement citizen science in their classrooms.
Really quickly, before Chelsea and Rachel go, first, this is a 2-parter for Jason. Number 1, can you tell us a little bit about your shirt? And number 2, can you tell us a little bit about your wildlife and what drew you to that fun project? So start with the shirt. We'd love to hear about that.
Well, the Wolfpack Citizen Science Challenge was done, as you can see, in 2018. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of faculty members got involved. My favorite one, which is, we might get to this, but I don't know if y'all know Carlos Goller, but he did one with Delftia that pooped gold around water fountains at NC State. I'm not sure if he did it during this Wolfpack Citizen. I'm not sure how many we've had up to this point. Maybe have we had more than this? You would know better than me, Caroline. But I was lucky enough to
Karen Cooper, she's in the chat. And also, I want to give Dr. Cooper, a quick shout out, because this event wouldn't happen without her and the sponsorship and support of the Public Science Cluster. But Karen, if you could let us know if there have been other Wolfpack Citizen Science challenges, that would be awesome. But anyway, Jason, we'll get back to you.
It's been hard, right? It's been hard during this year, obviously, to do another one. But so we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot with that now. What was the second question, Caroline? I got sidetracked.
I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about Your Wild Life, because you mentioned that and Rob Dunn twice so far, and we got to tell the people if people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Dunn's amazing. He's written lots of books, and he just really is interested in your wildlife, which is the wildlife that lives on us, in our houses, and lots of other places. I think up to now, we have over 8,000 species of some sort of human organisms living on our body. And so we've done things with face mites, believe it or not. 100% of us have these face mites that live on our faces. We don't know if they're really good for us, bad for us, or, just neutral for us. The stuff living in our armpits and our belly buttons is another very fascinating thing to look at. Another great citizen science project is called Not Home Alone. We're Not Home Alone, which is all the critters that live in our house. And so it's really trying to understand how many different species that live right on us and around us that we know basically absolutely nothing about. And so your wildlife is really a huge effort to try to understand that. And some of the discoveries they've had, and some of the species that we've discovered in our own basements and our own houses that we thought were on one continent only, and now is spread across basement to basement or wherever, across the United States and the world, is just amazing. There's lots of good stories about ants we didn't know existed in our in our streets here in Raleigh, for example, that now we know exist because of some of those projects. And so anyway, your wildlife is really looking at those sorts of things. So I would encourage everybody to look up your wildlife and see some of the great projects available there.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. And since I took us so far off track, Deja, will you ask the question again for Chelsea and Rachel?
Sure, it's no problem at all. I just want to know what is it that got you first interested in citizen science, or how did you first hear about it? Yeah.
And we can start with Rachel for this one, I think. Or actually, Chelsea, you unmuted yourself. You were quicker on the draw.
I don't mind if Rachel wants to answer first. Okay. I thought actually this was a pretty good seg from what Jason was saying into my exposure to citizen science. I think I have always, I've always kind of, and I'm thinking of Karen Cooper's wonderful TED talk about citizen science. If you haven't watched that, where she kind of talks about, and I always show this to my classroom when I sort of bring up citizen science. She talks a lot about how we all have kind of always been doing citizen science, and she writes a lot about that as well. And so I think I've always been sort of a kid that was interested in science, but never wanted to be a scientist. And I didn't really know what to do with that. I think I'm not patient enough to wait for results and things like that. So I knew I wanted to be a writer and to do that as my sort of career path, but I've always had this sort of passion for science. And I've always known people who were bird watchers and, who had journals and things like that, but I never had a label that I could really put on it until, and I had even heard of things like eBird, and different citizen science projects, but still didn't know that it was a citizen science project until Dr. Karen Cooper and actually another colleague of ours in Jean in our public science cluster at NC State actually came to our English 101 department where we have regular professional development on all different kinds of topics to help us just be better educators and things. They came and sort of had a professional development workshop about citizen science, and I read the little blurb for it, and it was kind of like piqued my interest. And so I went to that and was really excited about all of the opportunities of citizen science, and that it was actually exactly me, that I was interested in scientists from interested in science as a non-scientist. And so that felt like a really, really great opportunity to engage with it. And I actually, so in my, and I'll talk more about this later, but in my our English 101 curriculum at NC State is called what's called a writing in the disciplines curriculum. So English 101 can vary widely depending upon what schools that you are looking at. But the writing in the disciplines curriculum, because we are at a STEM school with a very intense emphasis on the natural sciences and the social sciences, that we are teaching students how to analyze the different forms of writing in the different academic disciplines. So humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, applied sciences, and how they vary when the audience changes. And so natural sciences had been previously what I felt like was one of my weaker links as a non-scientist, that I could look at the MRAD structure, I could analyze it, I could kind of focus on that, but I just didn't feel like I had a good access point for the students until I found citizen science. And that has been something that I've carried into my classroom. And I've actually had, when I first got started with this, another colleague of mine, Jen Bedard, who's no longer with NC State, I always like to bring her up because she helped design this with me. We kind of designed this project that, again, I'll talk a little bit more about later. But one of the first things we did was participate in the Delftia Citizen Science Project, where I think almost 100 students, or about 100 students between our two groups of sections for our classes to participate in Delftia. And this was actually after they had done it as a citizen science challenge at State, but we kind of were interested in it and thought it was a really easy way that we could integrate that and sort of expose students to citizen science. And then the following year, Never Home Alone at NCSU was one I also had my students participate in as a group, which they were horrified by my asking them to go find the bugs in their dorm rooms. And they were like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, well, you can call the cleaning crew, I don't know, and sort of take pictures of bugs in their dorms. So I've had students participate in those citizen science challenges before and found them to be really great in terms of connecting the NC State students to the NC State community, to the global community through citizen science. So that's something that I've really enjoyed and have seen a lot of benefit from.
Awesome stuff. Next up is Rachel.
So like Jason was saying, I was introduced to citizen science through a project called Students Discover. And for me, the reason I even applied to be a part of it is I was a marine biologist before I became a teacher. And so it gave me, for me, I was being a little selfish and I was like, oh, well, I get to do some research, but I also get to have the teaching part as well. And so I was partnered with Dr. Stephanie Shetler, who is a phenomenal scientist. She's amazing. She did the eMammal project. And so I worked with her and wrote curriculum with it, because as a teacher, you have to figure out how can you align this with the standards. So we figured it out with NC standards as well as next generation standards. And I did it with my students. I focused on one project the first year, and I actually presented at the Citizen Science Conference. Well, I did a poster session. And when I was there, I was walking around and I went to all of these different sessions in Minnesota, and I realized that the K through 12 sector was lacking significantly in actual doing citizen science, especially in the public school system. There were lots of places, museums and things that would select a few students and have them work on projects, typically high school. Lots of stuff being done at colleges, but not a whole lot going on below there. And so I came back from Minnesota and I decided that I wanted to flip my classroom. and find as many citizen science projects that I could possible to work with my kids. And a lot of that had to do with the first time I ran the project, I had a one student, this was 2015, so 5 years now. Her name was Troy, and I will never forget Troy because she was not a science person and she did not like science. And I said, well, why don't you help me with the camera traps because your best friend is doing it. And she's like, well, okay, fine, if my best friend's doing it. And after she went through the whole process with me, by the end of the year, because we kept the camera traps running the whole year, by the end of the year, she's like, Miss B, when I go to high school, I definitely want to at least start looking into the sciences. And that was a complete flip and a complete change. And so I realized, I'm like, okay, well, if I can get one student, what does that look like? And so the following year, I started tackling shark tooth forensics, and I did iNaturalist, and I actually created the first ever state education BioBlitz, where students in K through 12, we all BioBlitzed on the same day, which is tracking your biodiversity. And students were able to see stuff all the way from the mountains to the coast, and they just had so much fun. And since then, the more I do it, the more I have seen that students become invested. They become excited. So many more students who maybe weren't science people or weren't sure where to find it or what it looked like, they are just so excited. And for me, I've always taught at Title I schools, which are high poverty schools, high ESL populations. And the one thing that I've always said about citizen science is that it puts you even. It doesn't care if your native language is English or not. It doesn't care if you are the best, if you think you're the best scientist in the world. Everybody is on a level playing field. And not only from a teacher's perspective did I see students actually become excited about science and want to continue science and explore, I guess, is that I actually saw it in tests as well. I had kids who were projected to, 30% of them were projected to pass. And when I switched to citizen science, and that's how we ran things, we were looking at percentages no less than 71%. So to take kids who have been projected to fail their whole lives and introduce them to citizen science and get them excited and showing them that actually failing is part of citizen science, but that they can do it and getting excited. So citizen science definitely changed the way I taught, but it also has changed a lot of kids' lives too. So that's how I got involved.
I really love that story because I am the type of person who I just want everybody to be involved in science, and I want to see so many more kids just get the same passion that I have about science and move into science careers, because it's the sciences that really, the scientists are the ones who come up with all these great solutions about how we move forward into the future, no matter what type of science that you're doing. And I think that a lot of times we don't get enough emphasis on the sciences in comparison to other careers. And so I think that a great follow-up to that would really be the how. How do the educators in the room really start to, incorporate citizen science into their classrooms? You mentioned, Rachel, that you just completely flipped your classroom to become a citizen science classroom. How did you do that?
Well, I always tell people, start small. So start with one project first and pick a project that you yourself are passionate about, because when you're passionate about it, that's going to convey to your students and they're going to get excited. And they get even more excited when you explain to them that what they're doing matters and what they're doing is contributing to real research. And that makes a difference. So I started with, I started with eMammal, and that was camera trapping. And then I started going into iNaturalist. And then I also brought in shark's teeth forensic. And for me, it was different because I actually took it and I started writing curriculum so that when my administration would come in or other people would come in, I could tell them, like, these are the standards we're hitting, and we're doing real science but we're also hitting these goals and these targets. And it became a lot easier for students to look at food webs because they were looking at food webs based off camera trap photos, or they were looking at biomes based on looking at iNaturalist. And the students really became invested that way. So as a teacher, now, I mean, we have actually published a lot of curriculum because it is hard, especially right now in a time of COVID, to go, oh, wow, I want to take this project, but now I have to write curriculum for it. And now I have to do all this. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very fortunate that I got to work with Jason, and I'm now working for a company that allows me to do that for teachers. So where I'll write the curriculum for the citizen science projects and those things so that teachers, at least in the K through 12 atmosphere, can implement them a lot easier. But definitely, like I said, start small, because once you get that bug, that citizen science bug, and you see how excited your kids are, then you're going to be like, oh, I want to try more. I want to try more.
And really quickly, I'll interject. On the SciStarter Project Finder, you can select only projects that have classroom materials. So I just put that filter on there. And I mean, this is one for our friends in Europe. If we have any Europeans tuning in, they have classroom materials. But these are all projects that have thought about what educators face and tried to make materials to make your job a little bit easier. And so similar to the materials that Rachel's designing at her job. So I'll stop sharing there and I'll put the link in the chat.
And so with that, I guess I want to ask Jason, do you have any tips for our educators in the room on how they can try to incorporate citizen science into their classrooms?
Yeah, Rachel took mine, which was to try one. With every workshop that we did, and usually we try to introduce 3 or 4 citizen science projects that we felt worked best in the classroom, that had curriculum developed for them, that really covered the standards for those teachers. And then at the end of the workshop, we would have them write an action plan, like to tell us exactly when they were going to implement a citizen science project and to tell us what they needed. And so, and most of these projects are really easy to implement. There's not a lot of materials, there's not a lot of supplies, which, I love what Rachel said about leveling the playing field for so many students, but also it levels the playing fields for schools that are in very rural areas. In fact, some of these rural areas are some of the best places to do citizen science projects, and schools that don't have the resources can really tap into some of the great citizen science projects that are available. And I'll share, and I'm sure maybe Caroline and them can send it out, but there's so many good curricula out there, not just on SciStarter. In fact, Rachel's written a lot of curriculum. She's written curriculum on Ant Picnic and Nature's Notebook and eBird and Project Squirrel and Sourdough for Science, which you've already heard about tonight. Crowd the Taps, again, another great one. And then now she's at Sybil, and we'll share that website as well. And she's going to develop, or she's already in the process of developing a lot more curriculum and also kits that will be low cost that teachers can order to implement citizen science in their classroom if they are low resourced, and they need something to help them get started. But I would say, again, what she said, one thing I really believe in is self-determination theory, which is for teachers and for students. And what that says is we can get students most highly intrinsically motivated by focusing on 3 psychological needs. And those are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And citizen science hits all of those. 1, autonomy. Let your students choose. Let them go to SciStarter, check out the site, see what kind of things, a lot of things are like, oh, I don't know, I'm not an expert in this area if I'm a teacher. Who cares? Let your students go and research and see what they're interested in, and let them choose the project they want to do and just follow it. And there's some great stuff out there that's available to help teachers do that. But really, let them see what happens. Give them the choice and see what happens. The other one is competence, which students need to feel like I'm able to be able to do this. And this is where a teacher comes in to help facilitate that process, make students feel like they are able to accomplish this, that they can do this. And there's so many great citizen science projects that have so much like well written on how to do it, you know, and how to go through the steps and how to make sure you're getting valid data. And they build their competence through these sort of things. The other great thing about citizen science is I think is the relatedness component. You know, whether you're getting on iNaturalist or you're working with a friend or you're doing cool things in your classroom, being able to build relationships with people. I love iNaturalist that you can get a research grade picture. I think Rachel will talk about this. You know, you can take a picture and then other people come in and say, you know, outside in the community, you know, from another country comes in and says, yes, that's what that is. That picture is what it is. And so they actually get to build community outside of their own school in their house. And so it's just beautiful. And that's why I think kids love it, because it's so intrinsically motivating. And what they don't even realize they're learning something, you know, and then they're contributing to science. They're actually contributing to actual research of a scientist out there, which I think is so motivating as well. And so that's why I love citizen science and why I think it's so important for teachers to let them go at it. Let them choose a project. Let them get in groups and figure out what they're going to do and just see what happens. You know, just try it one time. And I can almost promise you, you're going to end up like Rachel, and you're going to become an evangelist and try to get all teachers everywhere to do citizen science because you realize how amazing it is.
We have some heartwarming stuff in the chat. Someone who said they're an INAT staff member said he's happy to hear stories of kids enjoying it. That's so awesome. And really quickly, it looks like we had a question come in. One of the attendees wants to know, does anyone have any recommendations on teaching online about how to do citizen science at home? I am curious if people have found good recommendations on how youth can observe nature at home safely without the teacher or parents being there. I have an answer for that from the side, but I want to
Rachel
hear
does too. We're actually doing a big session on it tomorrow. So
I did right when we were going into the first part of COVID, and I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this with my students and stuff? And one of the best ones was iNaturalist, and iNaturalist does have a younger version too for like littler ones called Seek. But what I did with iNaturalist first is we started out with why is taking photography, why is nature photography important in the first place? And I gave them a research article from, not really a research article, just an article from National Geographic about one of their photo conservationists. And it was really cool because it talked about why her photos were so important and what they were doing. And so we started off there. Which hits the literacy piece, which as Chelsea had said, you know, science gets just kind of like thrown to the side a lot. They're just like, it's science. And then I told them, I said, you know, we're going to work with iNaturalist. We had seen iNaturalist before, we had talked to them. And I had written out step-by-step instructions of how to use iNaturalist for both an Android and an iPhone that a middle schooler and younger could understand. And I told them, I'm like, for right now, before we even upload, go and you're going to take photos. And we shared them all on our platform. And we looked at, well, what makes a good photo? You know, and we discussed that and we shared photos and we talked about each other's photos. And then we decided as a class, okay, well, we like these photos the best. And then those people could upload those to iNaturalist. And it was fun because then, as Jason said, people started commenting and saying, oh, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. And those students, after like a day or two, we did a check-in and they hopped back on and they shared, oh, this is what it is, or this is what we think it is, and this is what this person said. And these two scientists were like arguing with each other. And then they finally decided to agree on this. And it was great because they got to see the whole process of, okay, why are we taking photos? Why is it so important? How do we upload them? They did it safely. And I did always, like you said, without having a teacher or a parent watch them. I just made sure that the students, number one, asked their parents or told their parents like, hey, is it okay if I look on the porch? Or is it okay if I go in the yard? Or always asking permission first. But that was one of the best ways that I did it safely with the kids. Another one that I've done with people virtually is Ant Picnic. If the parents I mean, had some to do with it, but like olive oil and sugar and salt isn't going to hurt a kid. So them working with that is not necessarily a bad thing. And then like Jason said, I'm working with a company right now to do student activity packs that then help align with, okay, well, you can do globe outside and it's just on your phone and it's super safe to do clouds. Or what does this look like? So there is lots of stuff to do that you can do.
So I think I want to transition a little bit. Well, first of all, that was a great, very relevant question. So thank you to the person in the chat who asked that question. But I think I want to shift a little bit and ask about how we incorporate citizen science at the college level, and especially Chelsea, since you are incorporating citizen science from the social sciences and talking about through English and writing. How exactly do you incorporate citizen science into your classroom, and how do you tell the story of citizen science or get your students to tell the story?
Yeah, thanks. So I think one thing for my class, I think in general, if you are in a non-STEM environment, just thinking about your course objectives, which I think is something Rachel was kind of talking about earlier, and thinking about how to think creatively in incorporating citizen science there. So obviously, as I shared, our curriculum is a writing in the disciplines curriculum at our university. But as we know, writing is not limited to one discipline. It transcends a lot of things. So for me, even outside of just teaching in the disciplines, even if you weren't teaching the disciplinary writing, thinking about, even if you're in art, if you teach art, or there's lots of ways. I think that what I really love about something NC State is very passionate about, interdisciplinary collaboration. And I think that that's something that I'm very, very interested in. And so one of the ways that I kind of think through bringing it into my classroom is obviously through writing in an English 101 environment, and thinking about how to create. So I have my students create texts where they actually promote these citizen science projects, where they have to there's a research component and there's an experiential component in the curriculum, the project that I've designed, in which and this kind of goes back to something Jason was saying about, not necessarily being an expert. I have done a lot of citizen science projects myself, but one thing I really try to do in my classroom in general, especially at the college level, because you can do this, letting them follow their passions and letting them follow their interests. And obviously English 101 is not a course that everybody loves taking. They don't always go into it feeling jazzed about it. And I know that. So I try to really design projects around my course objectives that will speak to their interests and hopefully allow them to follow some of their passions. So I actually do open up the SciStarter database and sort of let them choose a citizen science project. I do, as Caroline was pointing out, the lists option. My list is up there, English 101 project options you may have seen, but that's my list that I created of projects I think are a lot of projects that I've done myself, that I think are sort of within the time frame of our unit on this. And again, this is one unit in my course, so we spend maybe about a fourth of the semester on this citizen science project. But thinking through, kind of looking at those lists, picking one of mine, or choosing, kind of poking around. I show them the SciStarter search tool and allow them to kind of choose things. And every semester I have students ending up adding things to my list that I just put up there after my students have introduced them to me. So I have them choose a citizen science project, participate in that citizen science project, research either this, there are a lot of scholarly articles about a lot of these citizen science projects now, and sort of the ones that have been around for a while, and those kinds of things. So either they can hopefully find an article like that, like Philo has, has research articles. Never Home Alone, I think has one or has one in the works. There's lots that are kind of connected to some of these scholarly research articles, but if they don't have one, if their citizen science project is new or it just they don't have the data yet to produce a scholarly article, then I either have them research citizen science in general, which is kind of fascinating to see because there's lots of research out there about how effective citizen science actually is, and use some of that, or to research something that's topically linked. So for example, stall catchers is one that students of mine really tend to like a lot, and is focused on Alzheimer's research. So they may be researching stalls and figuring out what stalls are and how they work and what's the most groundbreaking research about Alzheimer's research, so that they can then use some of that scholarly information to help promote the citizen science project. So it turns into sort of a persuasive public science article, which I'm very excited. A couple of my students will actually hopefully be featured on SciStarter here soon on their blog. Thank you, Caroline, for all your work with that. And so these are ways that, but then I always invite them to include their own experiences and to really begin to understand that their experience and their engagement with these things is evidence in, why this might persuade someone to participate. So they have to, really get invested in it, learn about the research, why it's, again, why it matters, why the citizen science project is out there, what it's doing, what it's accomplishing, how it contributes to science and to our, our overall world, and also to experience, the hands-on aspect. And they love it. They love this project. I have so many students tell me that this is their favorite one of the semester. I have lots of students who have changed their majors. I have students who have told me they changed their majors to conservation biology because of doing citizen science in my English 101 classroom, which makes me really excited. I've had students, emotionally connect to these topics. For example, stall catchers, students who've recently lost loved ones to Alzheimer's, feeling like they're hopeless and helpless, and that they can do something against this. And especially right now, I've had lots of students write about COVID, lots of citizen science projects that are contributing. So many students are at home, quarantined, especially our college students. They were brought to the university and then taken home, and they're feeling really isolated and really kind of down. And so it allows them to kind of give back and to contribute to maybe a future solution or something like that. So it connects them. I think it's a really important project that connects them to their local and global community, and that allows them to see science in the world, but also for me to see how writing can really contribute to sharing information, and how writing can be important and useful beyond the English 101 classroom, which is really, really the goal. So I grow every semester, I think, with this project, but I'm really, really, really excited about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is really, I really love that you are using citizen science within your class, and writing is so important in every aspect of our lives, especially as we get higher and higher up in our learning. We realize that we can't really escape from it. It's a core skill that we all need. And so I guess as we kind of inch closer and closer to the end of the show, I guess I want to kind of go back and talk about more projects. So we've mentioned eMammal, we've mentioned Ant Picnic, iNaturalist. Are there any other projects that you really enjoy or would recommend for teachers, or that you recommend to your students to try, and I guess why? So everybody pick one project, and we can start with Jason.
Oh man, there's so many of them that I love, and so many of them has been mentioned. I was glad to see Karen put the Crowd the Tap lesson for high school chemistry, which I I think that's a great one. Sourdough for Science is also an amazing one because first off, you get to make bread. I mean, come on, sourdough, and it's so good. But there's so much science behind it, and it's so fun. And it's something you can do at home and you can take home to teach your parents. And there's so much historical coolness about that project that I love. I know you told me to pick one, but the one I'm working with now, there's a friend of mine named Bucky Gates. He's at NC State, and he's done a good job also of implementing citizen science into his biology courses for non-majors. And so we've been working on one, and Rachel mentioned it, called shark teeth forensics, and he may have talked about this. And one of the issues with that is just finding the sediment in the matrix to be able to get the teachers. And I've actually introduced it as a STEM night. I've been doing a lot of STEM nights for schools pre-COVID, and it was one of the favorite family activities that we're doing. And one thing I'll just say this about citizen science, just to add to the conversation, because I think it's really, really critical that we make sure that when we get our students or we're doing citizen science projects, that we don't stop with just them being data collectors. I think it's really critical that we move to the next stage, because otherwise they're getting just a small piece of what science is. I think what Chelsea's talking about, the fact that you're gathering data, many of these citizen science projects, you can access the data and you can ask questions about the data and you can analyze the data, and then you can come to conclusions, and then you can communicate it. You know, I do science fair projects across North Carolina. I'm always called to be a judge. And man, what I'd love to see a lot more citizen science projects. Okay, I can only see Alka-Seltzer and some of the other things I've seen 15 billion times at a science fair project. But you know, with shark teeth forensics, there's so much data in it as well, and so are so many of these other projects. And so I would love to see math teachers work with science teachers, work with language arts teachers, and see, you know, these teachers working together to create really rich, meaningful units that go across the curriculum. And I think that can be so powerful. We hear a lot about project-based learning, and a lot of you know, teachers are out there trying to create these great project-based learning curriculum and units. We have it. It's called citizen science, and you can do such amazing things with it, and really cover so many different standards and topics. So I would love to see more project-based learning that focuses on citizen science project, and I'd love to work with anyone out there that has ideas about that, because I think there's so many great activities and lessons and things that you can do, but citizen science is just so rich and so meaningful if done the right way. And so sometimes I think citizen science, many times teachers help their students become data collectors, but don't help them through the rest of the scientific process. And in that way, we're doing a disservice, because that's not just what science is. We need to make sure they complete the entire scientific process and understand that it's not just about collecting data, but it's also making sense of that data and analyzing that data and asking questions about that data and communicating what you find out about that data. That is so important. And writing is so critical to that, and research is so critical to that, what has already been done. So I know that probably didn't completely get to your answer, but I wanted to put that into as while we're talking about citizen science in the classroom.
No, that was a really great tip. I think that is something that often I guess, goes unnoticed. I love the fact that citizen science can connect the different disciplines that we use in school, like you were saying, in math and in our reading or language arts classes as well. And so, oh man, I lost my train of thought. But yes, and I think that was a really great tip. So thank you for that. Chelsea, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. I have sort of been exposed to so many. So again, I don't know that I could pick a favorite. I also think Sourdough for Science is great. And my students have been writing, I think I had a student write the phrase, have you been on the sourdough bandwagon during quarantine? As a hook, for her paper about sourdough science, where you develop a sourdough starter. I actually have my little pH strips here, if you can see them. Probably not, they're dissolving into my background, but just as a plug, if you are part of the NC State community, the library has been wonderful for us, and they have lots of equipment you can check out. If you are affiliated with the community at all, they have, they have cameras, like those amazing night sensor cameras to track the critters in your yard. I got these pH strips from them. They have lots of resources that they'll send out. But one that I thought was really interesting that my student just introduced me to is called From Debris to Art. And we've been talking about interdisciplinary kind of connection. And she is trying to get into the art school here at NC State, and she's an artist. And so she found this project, and basically it is what it says. You go and you just sort of pick up trash, and then you turn that into an art piece. And so she made this beautiful, she sent me a picture of it, beautiful art piece of koi fish that she made out of LaCroix cans that she had found discarded, where she cut the little aluminum and kind of made them into the scales of the fish. And it's gorgeous. And the whole point of the project is to put the art piece out there and tell the art piece's story in order to raise awareness about pollution, and to sort of engage the community with these things. So it is a very public science project, and I thought that was a really interesting one. And she actually has, since she's a student this semester, she has promoted it on all of her social media accounts. She's put it on, and she's sort of connected it to the SciStarter blog, and she's connected it to, these different things. And she's already sort of engaging. And she even sort of got so interested in it that she kind of did a little mini study herself, where she broke down how many people were, clicking on her account, and, from where, and all of those things, just to see what kind of exposure people are having. So I loved that. And I since added it to my list for students to do in the future, because I thought it was a really interesting project that kind of connects to some of those interdisciplinary things we've been talking about, and raises awareness for why science really matters, maybe even more now than ever.
I really love that, especially because it incorporates the A, so we get STEAM and not just STEM. So I really love that. All right, Rachel.
Yeah, there's so many, and like they talked about sourdough and shark teeth and all that stuff. Another one that I really like is Globe. And the reason I like Globe so much is because they have a variety of different projects run under the same platform, the same app. So it becomes really, really user-friendly. And it has a bunch of lesson plans that are already kind of built in that you can use if you want. And it's great because it focuses on, they have atmosphere, they have hydrosphere. I don't remember the formal name for soil, but then they look at the soil, and it's great because once the kids learn the initial platform in the app, they can then go in and learn all these other ones. But then Globe itself, they have like competitions for students that you can actually, I believe they have I know there's a middle high school one. I believe they may even have a collegiate level one, where the students can then go in and design projects and using citizen science and expanding it, kind of like Chelsea was saying, expand on it. And before COVID, students had some really cool trips. Like you could go to Ireland and like all these other places. And I just love it because it literally brings in the global community. And it's fun too, because who doesn't like working with NASA? Like if you got to do something, like NASA's kind of it. So, but yeah, so I really enjoy Globe.
That is awesome. Well, we are, getting close, 1 minute left to the end of our show. But with that, I mean, we've talked about some really awesome projects this week. We've really talked about, the story behind, I guess, some of the kids really being excited about having citizen science incorporated into their classes. And I really want to ask Jason, I think you mentioned that you had some type of workshop coming up soon. Is there a way that teachers can get more resources or work with you?
Yeah, in fact, tomorrow, Rachel and I will be doing an hour-long citizen science in and out of the classroom for North Carolina educators. For those of you not in North Carolina, hey, maybe you can jump in there. I put the website below. Maybe if you register, they won't check, you can get in anyway. But we'll do that. And if you're outside of North Carolina, look up the Science House, sciencehouse.ncsu.edu, or just Google us and request for us to do a workshop for you. We'll come do a virtual workshop with, whatever you want. We have so many citizen science projects to do, but feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much to our awesome panelists and helping us understand how we can incorporate citizen science into our classrooms. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined the conversation today. I really hope that these resources have helped you. And I hope that you consider incorporating citizen science into your curriculum, into your class in the future. And with that, bye everybody.
Yeah, and thank you to the Citizen Science Campus and Dr. Karen Cooper. And thank you to our awesome panel and Deja for co-hosting. See you all next week on Make It Count Monday. Go to scistarter.org